Welcome to 12 Minutes or Less with the Author. I'm your host, T.L. Brown, but you can call me Tracy. Let's get started. Hey everyone. Today I'm joined by the lovely Rose J. Fairchild, author of multiple dark tales, and we're going to talk about her latest work in progress that she is sharing while she writes it, A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow. Rose is a dark fantasy author who writes stories of blood and beauty, gifting fangs and claws to those who need them most. She juggles writing around family, pets, and a library job in the mysterious Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, where all things magical and sometimes terrible live. She's previously had short stories published in anthologies by Fay Core Publishing and Malarkey's Imaginomnibus. She is currently working on too many projects to count. Welcome, Rose. I am such a huge fan, and I am delighted that you are making time for us today.
Hi, Tracy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about my little baby in progress.
Awesome. Well, let's get started. First of all, this right here is this beautiful A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow, and it can be found on Patreon, which is really one of the things that I wanted to talk about today because it's exciting. You're writing an adult dark fantasy novel with fae or fairy creatures and other magical beings as your characters. And initially, those chapters were being released on Kindle Vella. But now you offer readers a more intimate way to connect with you as you write it and release it on your Patreon account. So, could you tell us about your story that you are writing and why you chose to share it with readers one chapter at a time?
So I decided to share it one chapter at a time because it is a work in progress. It sort of just came to me as an image of a fairy dripping colors from her hands, like a rainbow of color. And I happened to just share a little bit on Instagram, and I had like a handful of chapters that I'd written, and there was interest. So I decided to just share it as I went and essentially earn some alpha readers along the way. So you guys are my literal alpha readers on this story. Um, as to the story itself, it centers around a character named Aura, who she's she exposes true colors with her touch. That is her power. She views it more as a curse, essentially, because she's always changing things and exposing people and things for what they really are. So it's kind of earned her some ire over her lifetime, including from her mother. And after a particularly turbulent incident when she thought she had things under control with her mother, she ends up on the run. It's her default. She runs every time she changes something. So we find her on the run. And while she's on the run, she meets some interesting characters. She's basically trying to be invisible and failing. And so she has a special friend she meets who rescues her, a bird. And I love him. And then there's a sort of shadowy male she allows to seduce her while she's on the run. And she ends up sort of being, I don't quite want to say captured, but persuaded to go along with a very decadent, sort of smarmy, redheaded dragon wing like her, Fae male. And yeah, from there, chaos ensues. And she ends up, through him, meeting up with another piece of her past. And it's going to end up that that piece of her past future rests with her, but she sort of has to get over her fears and break out of the cage she's let herself be trapped in and embrace her inner light, if you will.
Fantastic. And for those who are listening and watching, I am reading these chapters as they come out, and they come out twice a week right now. And the characters are amazing. And before we started recording today, I told Rose, I'm not even sure who's who's which good guy is the bad guy, or vice versa, because they are so layered, so intriguing, and there's a little bit of steam going on there. I am loving the story and all those characters that we don't know quite who they are yet. You explore a lot of dark and shadowy subjects when you write, whether it's this story that you're writing now, or other in Malarkey's Imagine Omnibus. Um, can you, it's always beautifully written, but can you tell us, as a writer, what draws you to these ideas and why do you believe they resonate with readers?
I'm drawn to them. I've always been drawn to them in reading. And I used to write poetry before I started writing stories, and they were always centered on very dark things. As a quick preface, I had some rough stuff as a kid. I know a lot of people do, but that's sort of how I channeled that. And I use my writing a lot to heal myself. So I sort of am able to explore the darkness safely, and often am immersing my characters in far more horrible circumstances than I went through, which kind of helps. I embellish, I enhance, and turn it into a more interesting story. Um, but I always found comfort in the fact that they would go to like through all of this stuff and end up in a place that was actually pretty happy. So for me, in that darkness, there was safety, there was comfort, there was hope. And that is what it always comes down to for me, is that there is hope in that darkness. And I think my readers can see themselves in some of these situations, probably again more minorly, like they're not going through these god awful things. Hopefully, God, I hope not. But they can see themselves in it, and the darkness and the eventual, hope and overcoming of these obstacles hopefully brings them some healing and hope and catharsis as well.
I think you do a very beautiful job of that, and gifting fangs and claws to those who need it. I love that. And you do it beautifully. Even the trauma ends up being something. Hope is never lost. And that is very hard to do sometimes, but you do it beautifully. Tell us about your future writing projects. What's coming after A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow?
So after A Shiver, a Rainbow and Shadow, and actually probably simultaneously, for those who have followed me for a long time, I have been working on Hex and Healer for the last few years. It's had many incarnations. It is probably my darkest story. It is my darkest story ever. And I am working towards self-publishing that. So somewhere over the next few months, I want to do that. I'm tired of waiting for someone else to validate it, and I just want to put it out there. Like, I've worked so hard on it, and I feel like my characters are beautiful and they survived a lot. And it's really a lot of my own shadow work in that story. And I just want to share it with the world. I had started before Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow, another dark fantasy, but witchy. And it had this crow shifter, and the main character is Annika, and she was, I think, 35 years old and married and had kids. And it was again me exploring like a deep-seated fear. But I was at like 23 or 25K in that, and then I got distracted by fairies. And so I'll be going back to that again, because I was super into that one before I got distracted.
No, I totally get that. Sometimes you're right. You might have to set it aside and go with what's pulling you in the moment. You can always go back and pick some. I've done that. So many writers have done that. So you can always do that. Well, I want to thank you so much, Rose, for making time. We're in the holiday season here. It's a busy time of year. We're so grateful that you came on today's show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure, and I love your book so much. So it's like I get to fangirl a little bit while I'm here and actually like meet you through the camera. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Listeners, readers, join Rose's Patreon. So link down below in the caption. You can follow along as she reveals her steamy dark fantasy, A Shiver of Rainbow and Shadow. It's fantastic. And again, you can find more of Rose's dark tales in Malarkey's Imagine Omnibus series and Fae Course Publishing on Amazon. Again, links are below. Definitely check that out. The Patreon's really super great because you get to interact with Rose as she writes. And that's a gift for a reader. You can learn more about Rose and her writing on rosejfairchild.com. All those links directly to her social profiles are down below. Give her a follow. She's a beautiful person to follow, and what she posts is very uplifting. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I will see you the next time.